There are many things that go into making the experience of using Quest headsets immersive, and the one that really stands out for me is hand tracking. Having owned an Oculus Rift Generation 1, I can safely say it had some issues. One was that the hand tracking required me to set up sensors all around my room and attach them to the walls. Another major issue was the boundary situation. From what I remember, it barely had one. This resulted in a major lack of presence when using the device. Here you can see me sort of setting up the boundary on the Quest, and it's really cool the way it does it. And you will also notice that my normally perfectly clean room has piles of clothes and stuff all over the ground. This I did specifically for this project, just so that the Quest could detect it and set up a boundary. When it comes to presence and suspension of disbelief in VR, I believe the boundary and hand tracking are intrinsically linked. Like I said in class, you can't feel like you're really there in a VR world if you're worried about punching something else in your office. I know I certainly wouldn't want to hurt my monitor. Hand tracking on the Quest 3 uses a combination of infrared cameras and a pattern light projector, which determines distance to objects and also gives you that all important sense of depth. The front-facing cameras on the headset capture the image and the location of your hands or controllers in real time. Then the onboard software analyzes the images, locates key points on your hands, your fingers and thumbs, etc. Then this information is constantly updated, which gives you a fluid experience of hand tracking, and it allows for the precise capturing of finger movements. The outward facing sensors that detect your hands for hand tracking go forward in all directions in a wide cone. The only drawback here is that if your hands leave this field of view, you will lose hand tracking. And that, so if your screen's big enough, you can see this mirror I found, and I'm trying to show what happens when your hand leaves the field of view. It's sort of hard to get on video. Now, I'd like to tell you a bit about my backstory while you watch some hand tracking in action. This is gameplay of Phasmophobia. In this game, you enter scary dark locations and hunt ghosts using various devices like EMF readers, flashlights, glow sticks, lasers, and cameras. It's a great game to experience hand tracking on, as you need to pick up all these items you want from your van and then place them in the house. It accurately tracks depth and correlates it to the game. The hand tracking is really well done, so it adds a great deal of realism to the game. When you reach out and try and grab these items and put them on your belt, it really feels like they're this actual distance away that they would be in real life. Oh yeah, a bit about me. So as a kid, tech innovations in gaming were just the coolest things to me. My interest in them was endless. I used to play 2D line-drawn games on floppy disk on a Power Mac in the early 90s. So as you can imagine, seeing the current state of VR now is just amazing for me. I still remember playing an early VR game in an arcade called Dactyl Nightmare. It was very expensive, and there was always a long line. The game took an entire booth with a ring around it. It must have been 20 feet wide. It had a giant, unwieldy headset and gun, all hooked up with thick cabling to some early computer. It was large, and only one person could play at a time. This early VR game was so groundbreaking for me to experience that I still remember everything about it almost 30 years later. I'm going to throw in a screen grab from the Oculus Rift remake of this game, just so you can get an idea of how far things have come, and keep in mind the graphics in this are actually a little better than the original arcade. While playing this game as a kid was cool, I yearned for more. Having accurate and realistic hand tracking was something I always hoped and believed would exist in my lifetime. After taking this class, though, I realized what I actually wanted for was better depth and perspective, heightened presence, and the ability to fully suspend my disbelief. And you know, I have to say, with today's hand tracking technology, it really feels like we're getting there. So, I've played this game on a normal monitor on the computer, and it does get your heart rate up from time to time, but I don't get scared easily. Now, in VR, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right?
Being
Yeah.
fully surrounded by darkness while constantly having to grab items from your belt and interact with the world using your hands really gets you in the game. It truly feels like you're there, hunting for ghosts. Now, I have a hard time suspending my disbelief in movies and games. And how does one measure suspension of disbelief, anyways? I'd say if a game is making you feel real emotion, it's doing a pretty good job of it. In Phasmophobia, I truly felt fear. Something that's not really happened to me in a game, possibly ever. There's something about having to physically perform the actions you want to do with your hands, as opposed to just hitting a well coordinated series of hotkeys. This really slows you down, making things more realistic. And maybe, just for a few minutes, you'll forget that it's just a game.